This is a practical introduction to the fundamentals of mysticism in ancient India. The phrase that is used to describe these fundamentals is Sanatana Dharma, common both to Hinduism and to Buddhism. Sanatana means changeless, eternal. And Sanatana Dharma are those eternal principles or changeless values on which life has to be based in every country, in every age. If we look at our modern civilization through these eternal principles which govern all religions, we shall discover that we have honored these principles more in their breach than in their observance. And all the great spiritual teachers will say unanimously that until and unless we learn what these principles are and train our mind to live in harmony with these principles, they will all say to what we can bear testimony, there won't be any peace, there won't be any harmony, there won't be any abiding joy, there won't be any unchanging love. That is why the Buddha says, yes, pasika. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to take my word as authority. Look around yourself. Look into your own mind. Examine your own life. Scrutinize the politics and economics of the modern world, and we shall find, without the shadow of a doubt, that all these political changes, economic changes, even health changes that are being advocated are just band-aid, rather useful for a temporary relief, but absolutely useless as far as bringing in a world order that will give everybody a full opportunity to live at their best, physically, mentally, intellectually, culturally, socially, and of course, spiritually. Oh. In the Indian spiritual tradition, which goes back 5,000 years, the cradle of our ancient civilization is the Vedas. And it is not an exotic word. It is not an otherworldly word. Veda comes from the root vid, to know. And the same question that Socrates asked has been asked by profound thinkers, by very penetrating observers. in every age and in every country. So when these marvelous men and women in ancient India, 5,000 years ago, began observing very, very carefully what was going around them, they gave rise to many searching questions, which even today occur to very thoughtful people, to very reflective men and women who are not swept away by the sensations and petty satisfactions of day-to-day living, but who try to peer behind the passing phenomena. From them come great scientists, great poets, great philosophers, and of course the greatest of all, the greatest mystics. You have to imagine that you are in India now, where because of the tropical climate, the tremendous monsoons, the vast variety of natural phenomena, changes become more vivid. They arrest your attention more than probably in temperate countries. For example, India has 6 seasons, which has been celebrated by one of our greatest poets, one of the greatest poets of the world, Kalidasa. He describes in very beautiful language how nature changes almost every day to the very penetrating observer. And the changing of the seasons, each season brings its own procession of nature, trees, plants, flowers, winds, monsoons, snow, and some of these great sages made a great generalization that everywhere in nature there is ceaseless change. As I said, it is not only a superb scientific observation, it's a superb poetic observation because they've described these tremendous changes. To give you one little example, I never understood why you called the autumn fall until I went to Minneapolis. And when I was walking about the campus, I could see the wealth of color and the fall of the leaves. It was an amazing sight for me. And then I understood why it is called fall. Similarly, it is when you imagine the ceaseless change in nature, which shows itself more picturesquely, more vividly, more rapidly. In a tropical country like India, we can understand these magnificent observers of nature, men and women like Gatha, Maitreyi, Valmiki, Gargi, saying, all nature is a flux. ceaseless change, never the same from minute to minute, from kshana to kshana, and it is this ceaseless change that they began to study, which has been done in the West too by great observers of nature, by great poets of nature, by great scientists. But one of the most amazing feats of genius, of sheer creative genius, that has ever been attained by human beings was when these mighty observers, men and women, suddenly began to see a similar world of change within the human mind, which has never been done in any other civilization. It was amazing. They said, look, it's not only in the external world that seasons change. Seasons change in the mind of the human being too. And they would follow change in attitude, change in affection, goodwill giving way to ill will, and most hurtful of all, love changing into hatred. And the greatest proof of their all-compassing genius is when they brought these two worlds together. The world of ceaseless change in the external world and the world of ceaseless change in the internal world, and they said there is no barrier between the two. They look external and they look internal, but if you can see inside with eyes that are clear and eyes that are penetrating, you will see it is all a world of flux. And the Buddha, in a great spiritual epigram, will say, Bhava Nirodha Nirvanam. If you can somehow rise above this ceaseless change in which seeds become plants, plants become trees, trees fall down, become seeds again, and all life, birds, bees, men, women, they're all caught in this flux. And the Buddha said, if I could find some way to rise above this flux, to stand away from this world of ceaseless change, I shall know the real nature of life. And how I imagine the Hindu sages 5,000 years ago, slowly arriving at the Vedas and the Upanishads is by asking the first question, if ceaseless change is the nature of ultimate reality, through sheer logic, they said, we can never know reality. If everything is changing from second to second, from minute to minute, from day to day, from season to season, they came to the ruthless, relentless intellectual position, nobody will never know what reality is. Nobody can ever know what reality is. And that is why they made a breathtaking leap by saying the nature of reality is, whatever it is, cannot be perceived by the senses and the mind, which are constantly subject to change. They also flashed another inquiry across the sky of consciousness, which is very fundamental in understanding the universe. These great men and women in all religions, they are characterized in Sanskrit as jitnyasu. Jna means to know. Jitnyasu, who will stake their life to know, who will give everything they have to know. That's what great scientists are. That's what great mystics are. And they were of the opinion that when you have a tremendous urge to know, there is a tremendous truth to be known. They're all magnificent concepts, creative concepts. When you have a rage to know, a sweeping, tearing rage to know, there is a sweeping, raging reality saying, come and know me. That's why we have been given this power of knowledge called jitnyasu. And they brought together the external world, the internal world, which is something that has not been achieved even today. And as they were studying all these changes, some of the greatest astronomers, some of the greatest scientists, greatest mathematicians of the ancient world were in India. Mathematics was known as the Indian science. There were great cosmologists. So they studied all the external universe without any equipment, without any lab work. And I can never express to you the limitless admiration I have for the sages of my old country when they suddenly said, hey, it's not enough if I study the external world. It's not enough if I study the internal world. I will never understand the nature of reality if I do not study my instrument of observation. This is the hallmark of the greatest creative genius. And that is how the study of the mind began. The study of consciousness began. Instead of now looking at others in the external world, they began to say, the external world is not what I see with my eyes, because what I see with my eyes is dependent upon the nature of my eyes. If I had X-ray eyes, if I had Roentgen ray eyes, I'd be seeing all of you. You can imagine, you ask medical people how I'll be seeing all of you. Just as I see an X-ray picture, that is how I'd be seeing all of you. And they said what was discovered in Germany by Heisenberg Bohr, Planck and others, that what I see in the external world is dependent upon the instrument of observation I use. If I could discover another mode of knowing, if I could fashion another instrument of observation, then it will not be the same world that all of us see. When Gandhi says, I don't see the world as separate, I see the world as one. When he says there is enough for everybody's need, when there isn't enough for everybody's greed, he's not talking philosophy, he's talking darshana. He's looking at his photograph. And he says, that's how the world is, because Gandhi has fashioned a tremendous instrument of observation by, as he puts it, singleness of purpose, cultivation of an unshakable faith. He has discovered that all life is one. And any order, political, economic, social, healthcare order, educational, that is not founded upon this wholeness of life, Gandhi will say, will always lead to catastrophe, will always lead to disaster. We are seeing proof of it every day. For example, when I heard last night about the murder of the Prime Minister of Sweden, who is a great peace leader, who signed with 5 other leaders, including Rajiv Gandhi, only a few months ago, an appeal to the nuclear powers to join hands, to join hearts, instead of competing, to work together to help the third world, instead of confronting, to cooperate in lifting the world out of its terrible situation. I would have expected him to lead a cherished, long, full life. He's not even 60, and he has been cut off. I'm just giving you one example. Everything is a travesty of this supreme truth that you cannot build your happiness on the unhappiness of others. And you cannot but build your happiness. You cannot help building your happiness if you try to make others happy. As we all know, children are born with different physical features. They're also born with different mental features. We have always to remember that just as no 2 baby thumbs are alike, no 2 baby minds are alike. That is their uniqueness. And that's why we should never try to compare ourselves with others. Compare others with ourselves. It will always lead to dissatisfaction and jealousy. Every human being is unique. To me, every baby is a gifted baby. And if we can all join hands in so ordering our life, so reordering our daily living, that our children always see us putting others first, working for the welfare of others, using our time and energy to help others rather than to advance ourselves, feather our own nest. We shall be giving them the greatest education that any university can give. It is because our children do not have this education that when they come to the threshold of youth, they are faced by so many hideous problems which they not only know how to solve, they don't even know how to understand. No amount of technological achievements, whatever their legitimate purpose may be, no amount of political and economic changes, whatever good they may do, will ever succeed, the sages say, in establishing a world order founded in love, living in love, until and unless we give ourselves the supreme education and through our own personal example, grant the supreme education to our children. Now the question can be asked, why is it that we see life as completely separate? Even in the most intimate relationship, the separateness is still maintained. That's why often after a while there is conflict. After a while there is more dissatisfaction than satisfaction. Why is it that our nations arm against one another? And I read something that I hadn't probably realized about poverty. I've always been talking about poverty in Africa. 19 million people suffering from unappeased hunger. And I couldn't believe until I read it over and over again, there are more people hungry in this affluent country than in Africa. 20 million. And it is incomprehensible. It's absolutely bewildering when I see how much wealth we produced. We still produce. How much agriculture produce we bring forth. How much milk, you all know. And see, to me it is absolutely impossible to understand how even one person can starve in this country. How even one person, one child can go to sleep hungry in this country. Now I would say, leaving the world for the time being to focus our attention on our own great country, how will it be possible for you and me to have a 6-course dinner when we know that in the inner city of San Francisco there are children like our children asking for food and not getting? There are people like you and me going hungry to work. So this is not just a matter of economics. And this is not just a matter of political revolution either. It's a matter of sensitive consciousness. People with love in their hearts. For the 200 million people in our country, it's not enough if they have a sticker in their car or a button on their jacket. They'll feel all the time, I must live in such a manner that those hungry people find some relief. I must work in such a manner that those starving children find some relief. And when you are able to identify yourself like this with the poor and the hungry of our own country, you will simplify your life. You won't waste anything. You'll always look at this through the eyes of hungry children. And then it'll be another big step to extend to the whole world. I also was reading a little while ago something that I hadn't thought about, that there are 30 million people in our country without medical insurance. I'll be talking more about it on Tuesday when I talk about science without humanity, character without knowledge. Just imagine 30 million people without medical insurance, and it is, my source is the New York Times magazine, latest. They say these people cannot get medical treatment. When they go to a hospital, they are not accepted. And it is not a reflection on medical people, or physicians or nurses, for example. It is a reflection on the medical profession, which has become monetized. The patient is evaluated not in terms of his suffering, of her ailments, but in terms of his capacity to pay. Her capacity to pay, and I shall, as I said, be commenting on this topic at length on Tuesday. Now, any good, honest, sensitive physician or nurse will say, even if I don't get anything, I'll look after you. I'll take care of you. And a few people doing this in San Francisco, a few people doing this in Los Angeles, a few people doing this in Minneapolis, many people will be doing in New York. This is how it is done. It is not done through legislation. It is not done through just healthcare bills. It's done through personal example. And what I am talking about, when a person lives this kind of life, when you elevate your consciousness, you are elevating all consciousness, because the sages discovered consciousness is one and indivisible. This is another tremendous discovery. When I try to lead a life of selfless service in spite of all kinds of setbacks, I am not only elevating my consciousness, I am helping to elevate the consciousness of everyone who comes in close contact with me and who cherishes my way of contributing to life. In one of the famous quotations that Gandhiji was addicted to, he will say, Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande. If Michael has changed his consciousness, unified his consciousness to embrace all life, he has changed the level of consciousness in the whole world. That's the power of the human being. More people who come in contact with him on the campus, more students, more faculty, more critics even, will slowly absorb a little of this great change that we are all trying to bring about in our own consciousness and through it in the consciousness of the world. When these tremendous researchers, men and women, in all the great religions, to me, Jesus is a marvelous research scientist. The Buddha is a stupendous nuclear scientist. When they began to dwell on this all important inquiry, is there something beneath this world of ceaseless change? They began to get more and more absorbed in their observation, in their study, and the mind began to get focused more, because these were great geniuses. They would be thinking about it while walking. They will be thinking about it while going to sleep. They will be thinking about it all the time. So they had only one gigantic, all-consuming thought. All other thoughts of my pleasure, what I shall eat, what I shall wear, how I shall, all these were consumed in this one gigantic, titanic inquiry, which is dharma. They were not aware of their bodies. They slowly became unaware of the physical world. Then they entered the world within, the world where there are mountains as high as the Himalayas, canyons as deep as the Grand Canyon. They were fascinated. They had that video camera, just as Ed has. They were seated just like that, only in the lotus position. They were videotaping everything in the depths of their consciousness, and their absorption in studying all these mental phenomena, how anger slowly changes into compassion, how ill will slowly changes into goodwill, how hatred can be changed into love. All these again brought their attention into such complete focus inwardly that they entered dhyana. Now, when I often say the body functions in space, when in my deep meditation I lose awareness of body, I am no longer in space, in the world of space. And when gradually I lose awareness of the activities of my mind, I'm no longer in time. This is what happened to these tremendous figures. I imagine this is what must have happened to Saul of Tarsus. He fell down just as Ramakrishna fell down. He was not aware of his body. His mind underwent a metanoia. And the man who fell down saying, I hate Jesus, woke up saying, I love Jesus, I love Jesus. So when these great sages, men and women, went into complete absorption after dharana, after dhyana, into samadhi, their mind became still. There were no thoughts. There were no sensations. There were no feelings. They had gone beyond the world of change. They had gone beneath the world of change. And now they saw a world that was one, a world that was infinite, a world radiant with the love of God, as they would say, and they studied the instrument of observation. And they said, not the senses, not the mind, not the intellect, not the ego, but the still mind is the instrument of observation, which leads to what is called in Sanskrit turiya, the supreme mode of knowing, in which you see life whole, in which you see the universe directly, not through the senses, not through the mind, not through the intellect, but direct perception, which is what is called darshana in Sanskrit. Drishya, to see. And when we go to our sages, whether it is Sri Ramakrishna, or whether it is Sri Ramana Maharshi, or whether it is Sri Ramdas, whom Christian and I honored, or Anandamaya Ma, the greatest woman saint of India, perhaps of the whole world, whom we honored them because they see this supreme reality direct. They live on the lap of this reality. That is why when we go to see an illumined person, we don't have to ask questions, listen to answers. We benefit by looking at that person. And we benefit most by loving that person without change. Because that is what will enable us to discover the changeless reality ourselves. So they came to another stupendous conclusion. In my body, which is just like yours, there is the inestimable core of pure consciousness, which is exactly the same as the core of pure consciousness in Rick, Julia, Kate, Debbie, Jo, and Mary. There's no difference at all. That's why when we are able to extend this to the whole country, to other countries, to other people, other races, to the animals, to the birds, we at last arrive at the eternal equation. The pure consciousness in the human being is identical with the divine consciousness. And in the Upanishads, this is put into an equation, just like Einstein put in the law of relativity into his equation, E equals mc squared. The sages say, tat tvam asi. It is an equation which can be verified just as the law of relativity can be verified. I have, within reasonable measure, had all the highest satisfactions of human life even before I took to meditation. And that is why I am in a position to tell you that the love I have in my heart for all people, for all animals, all birds, for all forms of nature is a billion times the love I had in my heart when I was enjoying the highest satisfactions of human life. Similarly, the joy I have in my life, it is not that I don't face problems, it is not that I don't face difficulties. Almost every day I have a problem, every day I have sorrow to face, but grieving for others and trying to relieve their grief brings me limitless joy. Grieving for others and trying to ameliorate their distress brings me a billion times more joy than I have ever known. See, this is what I try to convey to you when I say I am not coming from the Himalayan caves or from any secluded, unsuccessful walk of human activity. Therefore, please believe me when I tell you it will support you, it will inspire you, it will motivate you when you keep your eyes on Samadhi, when you live for the life of all, when you want to live for the welfare of all, when you want to have a love that will be like a sea. The Pacific Ocean is called Shanta Samudra. The ocean in my heart is Prema Samudra, the sea of love. I have love for those who help me, those who hurt me, those who oppose me, those who hinder me. I don't make any distinction at all. That's the kind of love that will bring a joy that is not finite, not only in place but in time. It is this joy, it is this love that will accompany me when the time of my physical existence come to an end. Because this love has no end. This joy has no end. And the main reason why I hope, with the help of all of you, to live as Gandhi wanted, to 125, is so that with more and more people whom we may reach, who are going to help us, we may be able, not because we are great people, but because we are building our life on this bedrock of unity, bring about a change in living conditions, not only for our millions of our children in this country, for millions and millions of children in India and Pakistan, Nicaragua, and El Salvador, and Eritrea, in Ethiopia, in Australia, everywhere. Now, when the sages saw what reality is, what the supreme reality we call God is, they longed so much to convey how to arrive at this discovery to us, to billions and billions of people who would follow in the cycle of life, that they studied the instrument of observation and described in very practical language how to meditate. And even though I've been talking about meditation for 25 years, I probably told you only a small part of what I know about meditation. Because if I tell you more about meditation now, you will not follow. Just as what I tell you now, you would not have followed 12 years ago. So, as you grow deeper in meditation, as your instrument of observation becomes more and more powerful, I shall be able to tell you some of the wonderful adventures in the unconscious, which will provide you with a continuing joy, which will only increase with the passage of time. As you know, the keenest physical satisfaction, sex, everybody knows how fleeting it is. And where the Upanishads will say, don't you want to have this supreme satisfaction always, never leaving you, always increasing, accompanying you even through death? This is how they inspire us. And when I say it is because of my teacher's blessing that all my desires began to be consumed by this mighty adventure. Everything, my ambition, my anger, my greed, whatever, however little it was, all my passions flowed together from many directions until it became a great river of passion for God, who to me appears as Sri Krishna. In our Hindu scriptures, even Sri Krishna is not the supreme reality. The supreme reality is Brahman. And when Sri Ramakrishna, in the very depths of meditation, goes into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, when Sri Ramana Maharshi, as you know, went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi when he was in his teens, he had to be fed for many weeks, he had to be bathed for many weeks, he had to be carried for many weeks. He was not in the world of space. He was not in the world of time. And in that state, both Hindu and other scriptures, they'll call the source the Godhead, of which in the Christian tradition, Christ is a son. The Buddha is a son. But the practical importance of great devotion to a personal incarnation. In my life, it is Sri Krishna. In others, it may be the Christ. Still others, it may be the Buddha. Or for others, it may be Shiva, or it may be the Divine Mother. But ultimately, when I become absorbed in Krishna, my mystical tradition would say, he will get me absorbed gradually in Brahman. And the next question is, what happens to us afterwards? This is answered very clearly and practically both in Hinduism and Buddhism, to the best of my knowledge. In Hinduism, we say that you can live as Jivan Mukta. You can be completely illumined and still live on the face of the earth like Tom, Dick and Harry. You can go to the market, you can go to the theater, you can go to an ice cream parlor, you can go to Kokalat, you can do everything, and still you can be completely illumined, which is Jivan Mukta, which is an extraordinarily difficult art. And after the body is worn out, As the Gita says, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani ghrihnnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnan anyani samyati navani dehi. I, I do hope to live for 50 years more. Just add your ages. Some of you will be pretty old by the time. So don't get alarmed when I say this. But even at the end of 50 years, I have to shed my body, which I will shed just as I will shed this turtleneck pullover and put on a new one so that I can come back and be with all those with whom I worked in loving harmony, who love me with all their hearts. And that is why the title of a little book, Love Never Faileth, to bring people together in love and harmony. It won't be the end of the story. It'll be another great chapter, another glorious chapter for all of us to work together so that we can again make a continuing contribution to life.